A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support. When I sat down in front of my old gaming console that chilly autumn evening, I had no idea that one single quote would lead to a revelation that would change my understanding of friendship forever. I had grown up with gaming as my escape, a comforting ritual from childhood through adulthood. My friends and I had spent countless hours immersed in vast digital worlds, triumphing over impossible odds and sharing laughter filled with our most ridiculous inside jokes. So, when Stephen, my longtime friend, threw out a seemingly random quote during our regular gaming night, something he thought was trivial, a moment of nostalgia, I couldn't help but wonder if I was missing something deeper. We were playing an unnamed game that had become shorthand for our teenage summers, a classic that had shaped our bond. As the main character faced yet another absurd situation, Stephen casually said, "I don't even have to be in the same room to know you're laughing." It struck me hard. How many times had I felt the same way about him, knowing that laughter was a bond stronger than physical presence, particularly when it often felt like our lives were drifting apart in the monotony of adulthood. For weeks after that, I couldn't shake off that quote, replaying it in my mind like a soundtrack of nostalgia. Each time I picked up my controller, the laughter echoed, but beneath it lay a nameless anxiety. I sensed a rift growing between us, meetings became sporadic, and conversations dwindled to small talk that barely scratched the surface of our once vibrant friendship. I couldn't pinpoint why it hurt so much. Perhaps it was the unspoken tension of unfulfilled plans or the means of living different lives, as families and careers began to take precedence over our escapades. One night, while the pixels danced on screen and the soundtrack wove between our nostalgic banter, I hesitantly asked Stephen if he felt it too. Silence enveloped the atmosphere like a heavy fog, and for a moment, I feared I had crossed an unseen boundary. Finally, he sighed, the weight of 1,000 unwritten words hanging in the air. He admitted he felt disconnected, as if we were two players in a multiplayer game who had unwittingly wandered off into different maps. It was his honesty that instigated the wave of vulnerability washing over me, and suddenly, my emotions spilled out, my worry about us, my guilt over lost time, how I missed the casual hangouts that felt effortless back in college. It was an odd thing, to expose your feelings like this, especially when you're wired to keep the game face on, but it felt liberating. We spent the next few hours talking, reminiscing about shared experiences, those late-night campaigns and epic wins that felt like they could last forever. Laughter bubbled up freely in between our confessions, as the weight of underlying tension began to lift. There, in that dimly lit room filled with the faint glow of the screen and the comforting scent of takeout, we decided to reignite that lost spirit. We made a pact to carve out time each month to really dedicate ourselves to gaming together again, not just as a means of entertainment, but as a canvas to reconnect with one another. In those moments, I felt a warmth wrapping around our friendship, a reminder that sometimes a single quote can unpack layers hidden during bustling lives and responsibilities. Weeks turned into months, and though our gaming nights were sometimes fraught with the chaos of life, work and personal issues testing our resolve to reconnect, we held on to that promise. As I sit here, reflecting on how that small, seemingly innocuous moment spiraled into a deeper understanding of what it means to truly nurture a friendship, I realize that sometimes you just need a little spark, a whisper of nostalgia to shake things loose. Today, the gaming marathons aren't just about the achievements anymore, they serve as our therapy sessions, allowing us to unload, laugh, and share in the absurdity of our adult lives. It dawned on me that the love and support carried through friendships can be as fulfilling and reinventable as the fantastical realms we escape into. A week later, as if to close the chapter on this rediscovered saga, Stephen sent me an update, a meme that perfectly encapsulated that feeling of gaming together, reminding me of our inside jokes. Attached was a caption, "You may not be in the same room, but your laughter always fills the void." It was more than humorous, it felt reassuring, a touch of light in life's more serious moments. I found myself smiling, knowing that through the world of games and vulnerability, we had unconditionally connected again, evolving our friendship into something richer, all because of one small but impactful quote. As the days turned into weeks following Stephen's meme, the surreal blend of nostalgia and newfound connection lingered in the air like a comforting fog. I would often find myself scrolling through our past chats, reliving those countless nights spent unlocking achievements together, each message a flashback to laughter echoing through our headsets while gaming deep into the night. Life had shifted dramatically since we'd drifted apart, more responsibilities, heavier workloads, life wrapped in its unpredictable chaos, but that little meme seemed to have opened a door back to a place of joy that I thought had been locked forever. One afternoon, I decided to reach out, wanting to explore this revitalized friendship rather than letting it dwindle into another series of missed opportunities. "Hey, want to team up this weekend? I hear they've got a new event going on," I typed, my finger hovering over the send button, a nervous twinge in my stomach. After what felt like an eternity, my phone chimed with a response, "Absolutely. Let's wreck some noobs." The ease of his words washed over me, soothing my anxiety like a balm. As Saturday approached, I prepped my setup, rearranging my desk and ensuring my headset was charged, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through me. We met in the virtual arena, our avatars clashing against each other in a fervor that felt strangely liberating. Each victory brought shouts of triumph, each defeat was swiftly turned into a shared joke, and soon, the initial awkwardness melted away like ice under the warmth of the spring sun. The laughter rolled easily, punctuated by quick witticisms that felt completely organic and familiar, and I realized that I had missed him. Between rounds, we chatted about life, drifting from stories of our routines to hilarious anecdotes from the trenches of adulthood. It felt like time had folded back on itself, erasing the distance built by years of silence. Yet, I could still feel the ghost of that unspoken tension lingering, the memories of both good times and regrets hovering in the backdrop, waiting for a moment of acknowledgement. One of our victories led us into an unexpectedly emotional conversation, sparked by a seemingly benign comment about how difficult it is to find genuine friendships as adults. "It's crazy how when we were kids, all it took was showing up at the park to make friends," I said, my voice quieter in the sea of digital banter. His character paused, a rare moment of silence stretching between us as he processed the words. "Yeah, it's like we forget how to reach out," he replied gently, and the sincerity of it struck me like a chord plucked in an empty room. The sentiment hung there, an invisible thread connecting our experiences of loneliness and longing, the struggle of feeling like you're drifting in the currents of life away from those who matter most. That was when I took a deep breath and decided to bare a little of my soul. "You know, after everything, I always thought I messed things up between us. I got caught up in my life and let it take over," I confessed, the words spilling out with a mix of vulnerability and hope. I wish things had stayed the same." I held my breath, waiting for him to respond, silence amplifying my fears. "I felt it too," he finally said, deep and thoughtful. "Life threw us off our game, but I realize it's never too late for a respawn." I chuckled softly, relief settling in my chest. We spoke more about our drifts apart, the choices that had led us to this moment, and as we did, I could almost feel the shadows of regret ebbing away, replaced by the dawning warmth of understanding. We gradually crafted what felt like a new foundation for something brighter, a mix of past and present that was uniquely ours. Hours melted away into a pleasant blur, and when we finally signed off, the air was heavy with a contentment I hadn't felt in years. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling that elusive ache of nostalgia not as a sad reminder but as a comforting call to arms. Our friendship was evolving, not just from a single quote but from an entire narrative of recovery, laughter, and connection rebuilt. I couldn't help but wonder where this journey would take us next, embracing the uncertainty with hopes for shared gaming nights, inside jokes, and the sweet bond that comes from facing both the virtual and real worlds together. Without a doubt, we had found the portal back to each other, and I was eager to discover what adventures awaited us beyond the screen. A week later, I received another message from Steven. "Hey, I just found a bunch of old clips of us playing. Let's make a highlight reel of our epic moments." I couldn't help but laugh. Through all the chaos, he was still the same guy who loved to make memories. "Count me in," I replied, feeling that familiar thrill of excitement. As I settled down to sleep that night, the gentle buzz of anticipation swirled through my mind like the sound of levels being completed, and I realized sometimes it takes a simple meme to reignite not just friendships, but a journey of rediscovery. The next morning, I could hardly contain my excitement as the thought of revisiting those old gaming memories danced in my mind. When night fell, and the rest of the world drifted into its slumber, I found myself in an all too familiar spot, nestled in my comfortable chair, a soft blanket draped across my legs, and the glow of my computer screen illuminating the room. I opened the chat thread with Steven and felt a surge of nostalgia as I scrolled through our past conversations, a digital scrapbook of laughter and togetherness. Memories flooded back, those long nights spent battling virtual foes, the passionate debates over strategy, and the gleeful moments when we pulled off some ridiculous play against all odds. Our gaming sessions had become not just about achieving victories but about bonding, about being there for each other in a way life often made challenging. We were two college kids trying to navigate the intricacies of adulthood, and gaming became our sanctuary. The memory of Steven's infectious laughter echoes in my mind like a cherished tune. It reminded me of how, beneath the surface of our playful banter, we had shared vulnerabilities about our futures, our fears, and often our loneliness. Okay, so what clips do you want me to start with? I typed eagerly, and moments later, Steven sent a slew of hilarious highlight snippets, reminding me of our best moments, the time we had surprisingly defeated a notoriously tough boss after countless tries, his triumphant scream followed by an eruption of laughter, and the image of my character tumbling off a cliff yet again because my fingers weren't keeping up with his over-the-top strategies. As I began piecing them together, I could feel the exhilaration building, a project sparked by shared history rather than just pixels and gameplay. It was as if every clip reanimated the emotions we'd packed into those virtual worlds. I sat back, reveling in our camaraderie, acknowledging how these memories had woven themselves tightly into the fabric of our friendship. Once the compilation started to take shape, I felt a surge of pride, a creation born from our journey. "You've got to see this when it's done," I told him, and he responded with an enthusiastic emoji-laden message expressing how much he was looking forward to reliving those moments. We quickly set a date for the unveiling, and I could hardly sleep that night, my mind replaying each clip as I envisioned our reactions. The day of the highlight reel reveal arrived, and I felt a familiar thrill as I joined our call. Steven's face lit up when he saw the title on the screen, Epic Adventures, The Best of Us. I pressed play, and the sounds of our younger selves filled the air, laughter mixing with the background music I had chosen to accompany our exploits. We found ourselves lost in the same essence as before, those moments that felt so expansive, so freaking monumental in our lives. We were so bad. Steven howled as a clip had us both running in circles, completely oblivious to the task at hand. I replied lightheartedly, "No, we were just misunderstood geniuses." It was a simpler way to describe how we had stumbled through everything with unwavering determination. As the reel reached its climax with a montage of our best moments, I looked over at Steven, his excitement palpable. "Look at us," he said, grinning from ear to ear, "I missed this." Those words settled deeply within me, resonating with an unspoken truth I often felt but could never articulate. Our laughter lingered long after the video ended, and soon enough, we found ourselves diving into conversations that felt deeper, more emotional, sharing what we were currently facing in life, the challenges and uncertainties, the struggle between dreaming big and the weight of reality. It was in those conversations that I felt us shift from just friends into a true support system, the kind forged through years filled with shared laughter and tears, victories in games leading to victories in life. As the night dwindled, we promised to continue our collaborations and reconnect with the joy of not only gaming together but sharing our journeys. I felt a reconnection echoing in my heart, reaffirming that while life would always take us through different paths, some bonds would always guide us back home, illuminating the way in moments when we feel most lost. And as I crawled into bed, thoughts tinged with excitement and gratitude, I realized that sometimes it takes a journey through outlandish adventures in a virtual world to find your way back to a cherished friendship, reminding you that laughter truly fills the void. Weeks passed, and with every video call, every recorded session, and every shared meme, the bond between Steven and I only strengthened. It was as if we were weaving a new tapestry from the old threads of our friendship, occasionally laughing about how ridiculous it felt to navigate this adult life together, holding on tightly to our shared love of gaming, a love that had effortlessly bridged the gap time and distance had created. The thrill of recounting our digital quests inevitably led us into discussions about our personal quests too, the stories evolving into sincere conversations about our hopes, dreams, aspirations, and often, what we feared losing along the way. Then, just as life can often take an unexpected turn, I received a message that made my heart drop. It was from Steven, but this time it was different. It was an apology, tinged with grief. His father had fallen ill rather quickly, and the family was facing uncertain times. My heart sank. I had seen what health struggles could do, the emotional toll it bore on both the individual and their closest people. I felt a sense of helplessness wash over me, but I knew that sometimes, the greatest support one can offer is simply being there. I messaged him back, "I'm here for you, Steve. Whatever you need, I'm just a call away." That message felt insufficient but was the lingering echo of our camaraderie from years past. I knew just offering my presence would mean something, even if I couldn't wave a magic wand to fix it all. As the days rolled on, Steven went quiet, and doubt tugged at me, wondering if I was really being supportive from far away. In moments of confusion, I started remembering those chaotic gaming nights filled with joy, humor, and companionship. I realized that perhaps the very essence of our bond was precisely what he needed, fundamentally rooted in just being present. Eventually, I received a brief message: "I'm okay for now, just finding my way through." Knowing he'd reached out gave me a spark of hope. I decided to take the initiative and scheduled a gaming night. I sent him an invite to play our favorite game once again. "We can't let ancient heroics fade. Your laughter is the quest I need to complete," I texted jokingly. He accepted. That night felt familiar, and despite the dark cloud hovering above any concerns about health, we embarked on our digital adventure. As we slid back into our groove, the playful banter returned, notes of laughter mingling once more as we battled side by side, perhaps proving that laughter is more than just a response, it can heal and provide strength in moments of uncertainty. And at the end of the evening, as we faced our virtual enemies, I felt something I hadn't in a while. Despite the world outside being tumultuous, within that pixelated universe, we built something special again, re-establishing that vital connection. It was calming and a reminder that amid life's unpredictable seasons, friendships forged in laughter can often become a lifeline in the darkest times. A few weeks later, before another session, Stephen reached out saying he felt grateful for that small reprieve we'd gifted each other, claiming how that night had surprisingly helped him cope with everything happening around him. "It's strange," he confessed, "how just revisiting old memories can remind you of who you are." I couldn't agree more. Our lives had intertwined so beautifully that these gaming moments, once a form of distraction, had become a surface to resource each other, strengthening our resilience. This was no longer just about a game or mere laughter, it was a tapestry woven with care, memories, support, and love, reminding us that no matter where life tried to lead us, we'd always find our way back to one another, bridging any gap, laughing together in those chaotic yet magical virtual worlds. And eventually, I knew we'd create new memories, just like that one fateful meme, ushering in new laughter and connection. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt assured that with every laugh, every heroic quest, our enduring friendship was its own beautiful victory. There was a time when every evening was filled with laughter and warmth. I would return from work to the delightful scent of a home-cooked meal, the soft glow of candlelight, and my partner Riley, who greeted me with a hug that seemed to melt my stress away. For the first few years of our marriage, we relished our shared passion for cooking, often experimenting with new recipes or recreating beloved dishes from our childhoods. I was content, and my jeans fit just right, but as life often does, it tilted on its axis. It wasn't an overnight shift, more like a slowly creeping shadow, but over the span of a year, I found myself caught in a web of unexpected challenges. It began with Riley's demanding promotion at work, which came with longer hours and increased stress. I admired their resolve but found myself lonely in the evenings, eating alone more often than not. I'd started to raid the pantry, the fun of cooking fading as every meal alone felt progressively more like a chore. I justified my choices, telling myself it was just a phase, a temporary solace in the constant churn of responsibility. But then came the unwanted comfort of takeout, when all I wanted was to escape the silence of an empty house. A greasy box of fried rice or a cheesy pizza became the remedy, the only companion in my solitude. Strangely, I believe the more I indulged, the more I'd drown out the loneliness. The evenings that once blossomed into intimate dinners turned into binge-watching sessions filled with sugary snacks, deep into the night. I realized I was gaining weight not just from the food itself but from the emotional layers I layered in each slice of pizza or scoop of ice cream, a way of filling the void in my heart. Watching the numbers climb on the scale was sobering yet surreal, like looking at a stranger in the mirror. And yet, when I tried to confide in Riley, worried that my habits were outside the bounds of what we once shared, the truth felt more fragile than ever. They'd flash a quick smile, a fleeting appreciation for my vulnerability, but I could sense an undercurrent of discomfort in their eyes, as if the weight of my struggle only added to theirs. Our conversations turned less frequent, skirting around the budding tension we were both too scared to address. I was caught in a tug-of-war between wanting to reclaim my health and fearing the laughter would fade into something unrecognizable if I laid bare my reality. The sinking feeling in my stomach grew until one evening Riley returned home, their face crumpled with exhaustion from a long day. I had prepared a lavish dinner in a last-ditch effort to recover our connection, but instead of delight, I saw concern flaring in their hazel eyes. They asked gently but deeply, "Are you okay?" I crumbled before them, admitting how I felt engulfed by the weight of my habits, my loneliness, how I felt like I was disappearing into an identity I never intended to embody. The air shifted as if we both let go of our unspoken fears. There were tears and hard truths, but ultimately, we committed to each other to navigate this twisted path together, seeking joy in preparation and balance. In time, we resurrected our kitchen adventures, discovering new recipes that both invigorated our bodies and revived the lightness in our hearts. Neither of us is exactly where we want to be, but we've learned to be patient with ourselves and each other, holding our stories together without judgment, whispering those bittersweet confessions in the quiet of our home, wrapped in warmth and rediscovered laughter. I want to believe that the weight of this journey, both the loss and the gain, will continue to weave lessons that draw us closer. If you've ever wondered how to love during the struggle, look beyond the numbers, my friend, and perhaps you will find the heart of the matter. Update: a few months have passed since that vulnerable night. Our journey took a turn towards wellness, not only physically, but emotionally as well. The weight on the scale has lessened, but what matters more is the weight of connection we've chosen to carry as a team. Riley and I have started to volunteer at a local food bank together every Saturday morning, finding joy in nourishing others while nurturing our relationship. I've learned that each step away from solitude into partnership creates a new recipe for resilience. There's magic in the connection, often unequaled by anything on a plate. If anything, those greasy takeout meals have evolved into afternoons sharing a picnic in the local park, filled with vibrant salads and hearty laughter that echoed into the sky. On those warm Saturday mornings, as the sun spilled golden light over the bustling activity of the food bank, I would often pause amidst the steady rhythm of packing and distributing meals to truly appreciate the moment. Riley and I would work side by side, our hands moving deftly through the boxes of food, exchanging soft smiles and laughter that seemed to wrap around us like a comforting blanket. It was during these hours of service that I discovered a newfound joy. It wasn't just a weekly chore, but a transformative experience that gradually unraveled the tightly wound complexities of the past. Every grain of rice we separated, every can of beans we packed, felt like a step away from the weight I once carried alone. I could see the glint of determination in Riley's eyes, and it ignited a spark within me. This wasn't just about shedding the physical weight I had accumulated but rather about lightening the emotional burden that had followed me for so long. In those reflective moments, I recalled those late nights, trapped in the cycle of mindless eating and isolation, where food served as a reluctant companion during my bouts of loneliness. I had never truly grasped how my relationship with food mirrored my relationship with people. Unable and unwilling to connect, I threw myself into self-indulgence. Yet here we were, Riley's hand brushing against mine as we shared stories of childhood memories tied to family dinners, laughter spilling out like the plentiful boxes of food surrounding us. It was a different kind of feast, sharing our vulnerabilities and dreaming of brighter futures over plates filled not just with vibrant salads but with hope and intention. As summer began to paint the park with lush hues of green, we found ourselves more inclined to leave the comfort of our home-cooked meals behind in favor of leisurely afternoons beneath the rustling trees. There was something so liberating about laying down the picnic blanket and unpacking lunch, free of the stress that once accompanied food. We had taken to experimenting with healthy recipes together, and the process itself became an adventure. We would stroll through the local farmer's market, picking out ripe avocados and fresh herbs, savoring the air laced with the aroma of baked bread and blooming flowers. Our shared experiences began to nourish us in ways I hadn't anticipated. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling week of work for both of us, I felt the familiar pang of anxiety creep in. I had stepped on the scale only to find a number I hadn't seen in a long while, and though I had tried to shake it off, the weight of that digit hung in the air, threatening to overshadow the joy I felt with Riley. I found myself retreating inward, worry spiraling like a whirlpool, and I could sense the change. Riley, ever perceptive, noticed my silence during a picnic, my mind racing with comparisons, doubts, and a precarious sense of failure. "Hey," Riley said softly, pulling a cluster of cherry tomatoes from our spread, "what's going on in that head of yours?" The concern in their voice snapped me back like a rubber band against skin. I hesitated, but the gentle nudging of their understanding eyes coaxed the truth out of me. I stepped on the scale. "I don't know how I feel about it," I whispered, the vulnerability stirring a wave of unease in my chest. To my surprise, Riley didn't dismiss my worry. Instead, they shifted closer, inputting warmth and acceptance into a moment where I might have anticipated judgment. "It's okay to feel that way. But remember the journey we're on. It's not about the numbers. We're doing this together." And in that exchange, something shifted. For the first time, I realized that Riley wasn't just my anchor but my partner. There was an intertwining of our struggles and triumphs that made the journey so much richer. As we shared our fears and insecurities beneath the dappled sunlight, I found comfort in the shared humanity of struggles. Facing the truths laid bare, I understood that weight comes not just from the body but from the emotional baggage that clings to us. With every heartfelt conversation, every laugh shared over a simple meal, we were queuing up all those intricate layers of connection that overshadowed the fleeting discomfort of a number on a scale. As autumn approached, we made it a point to continue our tradition. Every weekend, we would dig deeper into treasured recipes, while each meal crafted blossomed with discovery and meaning. I transitioned to viewing food as a source of connection, establishing routines that nurtured not just our bodies, but also the bonds that fortified our hearts. The idea of weight shifted entirely. It morphed into a celebration of resilience, companionship, and perhaps most importantly, the magic of transformation. An update on our story came when Riley surprised me one early Saturday morning with a phone call. "Hey, I've got an idea that could spice things up for our volunteering." Their voice held excitement, and curiosity swirled within me as I listened. "What if we organized a community cook-off at the food bank? We can involve everyone we've met, share recipes, culture, and celebrate food as we have, but on a larger scale, allowing them a chance to share their stories too." A thrill of ideas cascaded within me. Naturally, I threw myself into the project with gusto, helping to plan out details and gather ingredients. So, when the day finally arrived, a sense of pride bloomed within me as I watched the community come together, laughter echoing in the harvested sunlight, stories flowing as flowingly as the various dishes that filled each table. Riley and I exchanged satisfied glances amidst the fray, our hands gripping tightly as we relished this moment that seemed to signify a milestone in our journey, a festival committed to connection, nurtured through the ingredients of love, support, and resilience. I realized the true measure of weight isn't found on a scale, but in the richness of relationships we foster along the way. It's in the laughter that resonates in our memories and the connections that nourish our deepest selves, an intricate tapestry woven together one experience at a time. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the bustling festival grounds, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the path Riley and I had carved out together. The laughter of children spun joyfully in the air, drifting past the aromatic stalls filled with local produce, arts, and crafts. It was a community united in celebration, where each vendor wore a smile as bright as the colors of their wares. I couldn't help but breathe deeply, taking in the savory scents wafting from the food stalls, barbecue smoke mingling with sweet notes of freshly baked pastries. With every passing moment, I savored not just the comforting flavors that tasted of home, but also the warmth of Riley's hand in mine, our fingers interlaced like the vines wrapping around the nearby oak trees. When we made our way over to a small booth selling homemade jam, the elderly woman behind the counter welcomed us with a twinkling smile. Her hands were calloused yet gentle as she showed us the vibrant labels, each depicting a different fruit imbued with stories of sun-soaked days and summer whispers. "This one's made from the first strawberries of spring," she said, her voice nostalgic as she handed us a small sample. As we tasted the sweet spread, I could see Riley's face light up, and in that moment, I was reminded of how far we had come, how filling our lives with love and connection was beginning to replace the emptiness that once sat heavy in my own heart. After a leisurely stroll through the festival, we settled on a patch of grass beneath a sprawling sycamore tree, its branches offering a comforting canopy. Riley unpacked our homemade picnic, a collection of vibrant salads and hearty sandwiches, all crafted from ingredients we had picked up together at the food bank's community garden. The sun filtered through the leaves, dappled light playing on our faces as we shared bites and stories, laughter spilling between us like an uncontainable river. "You know," Riley began, crossing her legs beneath her, "it's strange to think how food used to connect us in a different way, isn't it? I remember all the late-night takeout and how it was always more about escaping the day than really celebrating anything." I nodded, understanding all too well how those nights were often marked by solitude and the clinking of takeout containers rather than warmth and conversation. "Yeah," I replied softly, "it's almost like we used food to fill the spaces we didn't know how to navigate emotionally." We were both silent for a moment, the hum of festival laughter in the distance grounding us as we processed those feelings. It was liberating to acknowledge our past without letting it define us. Riley reached out and placed her palm on my cheek, bringing my gaze back to her. "But look at us now, creating new memories, giving new meaning to those moments. That's what it's about, right? Learning to nourish ourselves in every sense of the word." Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of hope and determination, emboldening me to step further into this newfound journey with her. With dusk settling in, the festival exploded to life with flickering lights strung across the trees, illuminating the path of laughter and connection all around us. We moved from stall to stall, sharing bites of gourmet grilled cheese and sipping on fresh apple cider as the sky transformed into a canvas of purples and blues. Every moment felt imbued with the lessons we had learned, the importance of intentionally, of savoring not just food but the quiet magic woven into relationships. And in that bustling atmosphere, it dawned on me just how much I had been missing, how easy it had been to get lost in my own solitude, yet how deeply transformative it was to lay aside old habits and embrace vulnerability. As we leaned against each other on a bench, our bellies full and hearts even fuller, I knew that this was just the beginning. In my heart, I felt a shift, an understanding that life was not just about the meals we shared but also the people who enriched those moments, who brought flavor and vibrancy to the everyday. Our journey together echoed the very essence of a bustling market, a beautiful blend of the familiar and the unexplored, the laughter of a newfound connection taking center stage in our lives. Later, as the sounds of the festival faded and the stars twinkled brightly above, I came to realize that the joy of our partnership would continue to thrive. I turned to Riley. "I can't imagine doing this without you. This feels too right." She smiled, leaning in closer, the warmth of her body providing both comfort and strength as she whispered, "We're in this together, always." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle in, a vow of sorts, echoing the harmony we had woven into our lives through love, resilience, and the steady rhythm of shared moments. The true measure of weight was indeed not confined to a scale, but rather the delightful burden of connection we carried, woven tightly with each experience we chose to embrace. I never expected my career as a mental health therapist would introduce me to something so unsettling, something so beyond my understanding that it would leave an indelible mark on my life. I've spent years working in various clinics, hearing people pour out their fears, anxieties, and traumas, yet I never prepared myself for the day I would meet Drew, my new patient who quite literally lived in a basement. It started on a cloudy Tuesday, just a typical day at the office, when I received an unexpected referral to see a patient in dire need. The organization informed me that the new patient was a young man in his late 20s, living at his parents' house, but the caveat here was that he had taken residence in their damp, dark basement. Perhaps I sensed the curiosity mingling with apprehension as I entered that basement for the first time, descending the rickety stairs under the dim light fixture that flickered ominously. When I first laid eyes on Drew, sitting curled up in the worn armchair littered with mismatched blankets and half-finished novels, he didn't seem out of place at all. He looked like one of those characters, deeply intriguing, yet profoundly damaged. As we started our sessions, I learned more about him. His voice was soft yet unwavering, full of wisdom that belied his years. Drew revealed he was an aspiring writer, but his creativity was stifled not only by his crippling anxiety but a family history riddled with mental health struggles that seemed to hover over him like a thick fog. The reason he confined himself to the basement was twofold. 1, he felt safer from his overbearing parents, and 2, it had become a sanctuary where he could tiptoe along the fragile line between reality and his vivid imagination. Slowly, week after week, he unspooled the terrible tapestry of his life, and with every session, I felt more connected to him. I, too, grappled with a blend of empathy and unease, wondering if I was genuinely offering him the help he needed or simply peering into a disquieting parallel of my own existence. His stories had begun to weave themselves into my mind, and a mysterious bond developed between us, shrouded in mutual vulnerability and unspoken truths. In my gut, though, a nagging doubt began to creep in. Had I crossed an unspoken line? The basement was replete with shadows that twisted and turned in an unsettling dance, and as I opened the door to leave every session, I felt as if I was stepping into a realm that was both captivating and deeply forbidding. One week, as Drew recounted a particularly harrowing tale about a character of his creation that mirrored his struggles, his energy shifted. There was something in his eyes then, a flicker, maybe of madness or sheer genius, it was hard to tell. I found myself holding my breath, sensing that I had stumbled into a fracture of his soul I wasn't fully prepared for. He mentioned a night he felt compelled to protect himself, drawn into a world where he blurred the lines between fiction and reality. He spoke of the basement in such vivid detail that I almost believed it concealed a world of its own. The conversation lingered like an echo in my mind, unsettling and captivating, and as we closed our session, he handed me a yellowed piece of paper filled with scrawled notes and sketches. "It's a character chart for my next story," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "But it's more than that, it's about me." I felt like a voyeur peering at the fragile flaps of his psyche exposed, and I saw visions of that basement, full of shadows, solace, and maybe something sinister, a vessel for both creativity and torment. In the days that followed, I found myself lost in thought about the stories he told and the meanings hidden beneath his words. One rainy evening, driven by impulse, I decided to venture to his home once more, convinced to understand the space that shaped Drew. As I approached the house, its haunted facade loomed in the dim light, the cracks in the walls seemed to mirror the fractures within the man I had been trying to help. I knocked nervously, and his mother opened the door with a distant look in her eyes, as if too lost in her own thoughts to notice my presence. She led me down to the basement without a word, and once again, I was swept into that dim world filled with shadows and silence. Drew was seated exactly where I'd last seen him, yet there was an air of something different, a thick silence that hung between us like a taut string about to break. He offered me the chair, but I hesitated, suddenly aware that the weight of the room had shifted. "How did you even know to come here?" he asked, his tone low, almost cautious. I explained my worry, my need to understand him better, but the moment my voice faltered, I felt the unease ripple through the space. Something was wrong. That paper he'd handed me was not merely character sketches, they were intricate maps, ones I had overlooked. I leaned closer, trying to absorb every detail, my heart racing as I realized they depicted not just his stories but a labyrinth that mirrored his mind, a prison where his fears came to life. "Drew," I began, my voice quaking, "is there something else you need to share?" He looked up then, his eyes wide as if a veil had been lifted, revealing something buried deep. "I was trying to escape it," he confessed, his hand shaking slightly. "The basement, my mind, it's all the same." And there it was, the roots of his anxiety twisted into the mere act of climbing stairs, as if the very act of going beyond those four walls would unravel the stories he encapsulated. The moment we stood there, surrounded by the artifacts of his life, I realized I was standing at the precipice of something profound. I couldn't help but feel that we had both stepped into a world where compassion danced with darkness, where understanding intertwined with fear. I left that night, my mind racing with thoughts of our conversation, infuriated with myself. I had come seeking answers but found more questions, knots of confusion wrapping deeper around my heart. In the weeks that followed, our sessions transformed. I learned as much from him as he from me. I began to see that the basement was not just a physical space but a realm for healing, a canvas for his creativity and his pain, pushing me deeper into my own fears about boundaries and the nature of care. As I continued to support him in constructing bridges back to the wider world, I realized that sometimes from the deepest shadows, creativity can bloom. What initially seemed a prison became a place of liberation in Drew's mind. Drew eventually moved out of that basement, transitioning into his own apartment, but he never fully left that space behind. Occasionally, I find a bolt of vivid inspiration in his stories. They resonate in me like echoes of a song forgotten. The basement was an invitation to ponder how darkness and light can coalesce, shaping our narratives in ways we might never anticipate. Months later, I returned for one last session, filled with pride and bittersweet nostalgia. As we closed the door behind us, I realized we had woven a tapestry of healing from the threads of his fears. Drew offered me a handwritten letter before I left, expressing thanks that resonated with the warmth shared in those moments, leaving me with a heart full of wonder for the stories that define us. I don't know if I'll ever truly untangle the threads of our journey, but maybe, just maybe, those tales will continue to twist and turn through the shadows, guiding others home. The basement may have held its secrets, but our shared journey had birthed an unexpected friendship, reminding me that healing often blooms in the unlikeliest of places. And as I walked away, I felt an odd sense of closure, both for him and for myself, marveling at how connections can shift the boundaries of understanding. Somehow, through all the chaos, a sense of hope emerged. Life moves forward, often in the quietest of ways, from the shadows of our deepest fears. As I stepped out of that dimly lit basement for the last time, the scent of damp earth and stale memories clung to my clothes, a reminder of all that had transpired within the confines of those four walls. The late afternoon sun poured down, warm and inviting, contrasting sharply with the chill of the basement I'd just emerged from. It felt surreal, leaving behind a world that had unfolded so intricately, yet contained within such a compact space. I glanced back at the windowless facade, wondering how many secrets it still held, and how many more stories could be carved from its shadowy existence. My mind drifted to Jacob, the patient who had inadvertently become my confidant, revealing pieces of himself that seemed more like fragments of a puzzle than complete thoughts. Every session had brought its own revelations, but it was during our last visit that I learned the most about him, not through his words, but through the silence that lingered between us. In that silence, I realized the burden he carried. It wasn't merely the shame of his living conditions or the burden of his past that weighed him down, but the profound loneliness that accompanied his struggle. We had both used therapy to weave a thread of understanding, but perhaps it was more than that. It had become our lifeline in a stormy sea of isolation. It was that very humanity that connected us, more genuine than any scripted psychobabble. Even after our sessions ended, his voice echoed in my thoughts, especially his final words, which felt like both a closure and an invitation. "We're all just stories waiting to be told," he had said, a slight smile breaking the heavy gravity of his usual demeanor. I had left him with an assurance that he would never be alone again in this, that I would carry his story with me, sharing it in my own therapeutic journey. The ride home was filled with a medley of emotions swirling in my chest. I drove through the streets, watching life unfold in front of me, a chaotic dance that seemed so vibrant compared to the stillness I had just left behind. Children rode their bicycles, adults chatted idly on sidewalks, and the sun dipped lower on the horizon, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. It struck me that everyone carried their own hidden struggles, akin to Jacob's. I could see snippets of their own stories passing by. The thought made me reflect on the inevitability of connection and how lives intertwine, often without first realizing our shared burdens. Late that evening, after a simple dinner of takeout sushi, I found myself drawn to my journal, compelled to somehow capture the essence of Jacob's journey. As I scribbled, I felt the weight of each word, the importance of preserving both his vulnerability and strength. I wrote about the laughter we shared, how he revealed fragments of his past in the safety of our sessions, the way he cracked jokes about his ex-girlfriends who lived in the realm of his memories, and how he took each poke of humor as a sliver to cut through his despair. With every stroke of the pen, I felt a release. I was processing his story while weaving it with my own appreciation for the resilience of the human spirit. In the weeks that followed, I kept Jacob in my thoughts more than I had anticipated. Each day seemed to bring a new layer to my understanding of what it meant to acknowledge someone's struggles and how much healing could stem from this acknowledgement. I had begun to reach out, sharing snippets of his journey at professional gatherings, using his anonymity wisely but ensuring his message was clear. Sometimes, hope is found in the most unexpected places, I would say, letting my colleagues know that each patient holds a labyrinth of experiences waiting to be navigated. As I moved through the rhythms of my life, the moments of doubt and worry echoed the earlier feelings of uncertainty I'd felt before meeting Jacob. It made me wonder if I was truly helping others in my practice, or merely dancing around the fringes of healing. But every time I remembered Jacob's laugh, that clear, light laugh that echoed in the depths of despair, I knew then that every patient had their own story, a narrative that deserved to be heard and, at times, passed forward. And so, I learned to walk with a lighter heart, carrying Jacob's strength alongside my professional insights. It was a role we both had unknowingly embraced. I was his watcher and he was my guide. As the boundaries blurred, I realized that each connection I made afterward felt richer, more vibrant, echoing the lessons I had learned in that basement. Months passed, and while I never stopped checking in on him, the visits dwindled. His progress had become a blossoming journey of his own. One evening, just as the winter frost began to settle in, I received a message from him. It was a simple image, a photo of himself standing outside a brightened door, grinning into the camera. "I got a place above ground," it read, "just a tiny studio with a view of the stars." In that moment, my heart soared with pride. Perhaps the stories held within our shadows weren't meant to disappear, after all. Instead, they became guides, reminding us that, together, we could traverse even the darkest of paths, eventually finding the light. The days that followed that heartfelt message felt lighter, almost as if the chill of winter was merely a backdrop to the warmth blossoming within me. As a therapist, I'd always known that change was possible, but witnessing it firsthand in someone so close to the edge of despair was different. It was invigorating, a testament to the human spirit's resilience. Encouraged by his message, I found myself reflecting on our sessions together, how his quiet determination had sparked something deep within me. He'd shared stories of his past, his childhood and dreams, woven with threads of despair that had once held him captive in that dim basement. Yet somehow, he had begun to untangle those knots, seeking a life beyond the confines of the life he'd constructed. I wanted to see him thrive in his new world, to bask in the glow of his hard-fought freedom. I put aside my research for the day, eager to reach out and arrange a visit. When the day finally came, I felt an unusual mixture of excitement and nervousness, a tangible thrill coursing through my veins as I rang the doorbell of his new place. The tiny studio indeed had a view of the stars, twinkling brilliantly against the velvet night sky, and it felt miraculous to stand in this space that smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. When he opened the door, the joy in his eyes mirrored the vastness above. "Welcome to my new chapter," he said, his voice steady, yet laced with an undercurrent of disbelief. We spent hours talking, about his transition, the spooky stories he had filled our sessions with, and how he was learning to embrace both the light and dark within himself. The vulnerability we shared deepened our bond beautifully. I was no longer just his therapist but a friend, a confidant. As the night wore on, he took me to the small balcony where we could see the stars in all their glory. He pointed to one specific star that shone brighter than the others, calling it his milestone star, a symbol of his journey toward healing. I stood beside him, aware that my heart was expanding with every word we exchanged. It was during those moments of genuine connection, immersed in laughter and shared silence, that I realized how much his struggle had mirrored my own. As a therapist, I had also escaped the shadows, my own fears of inadequacy and the burden of expectations plaguing my mind. Being present with him allowed me to confront my own journey, helping me understand that healing happens collectively as much as it does individually. After what felt like both an eternity and a fleeting instant, the chill of the night crept in, and we both knew it was time for me to go. However, just before I left, he grabbed my arm gently. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." I felt a lump in my throat but managed to smile, grateful for the role I had played in his transformation. As I headed home, I couldn't shake the feeling of euphoria lifting my spirits higher. I had walked with him through his shadows, and now, I looked forward to witnessing the glow of his newfound hope light up his world. Not long after, I received another message from him. "I feel like I can take on anything now," he shared, mixed with pictures of him smiling with new friends in a local cafe. I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming pride swell within me. But as the weeks unfolded, I realized that there was still a lot of work to be done, not on his part, but on mine. I began to understand that sharing my own struggles could help others, just as I had seen him blossoming without the constraints of his past fears. And as winter melted into a warmer spring, I started to pen my own stories, some connected to my journey as a therapist, others reflecting my personal challenges. I found an unexpected community online, and in sharing, I diminished the power of those shadows that often tried to creep back in. While he stepped into life above ground, I was taking my own journey into the light. Together, we became beacons of hope, finding solace in our shared vulnerabilities and kindness for each other's pain. As we continued to share updates, our conversations illuminated the understanding that healing didn't have a finish line. It was messy, complex, and defined by moments of triumph and despair, but embracing those moments in our lives could lead not just to personal growth, but also to connection. So, when I reflect back on that basement and the struggles that transpired, I now see it as a sacred ground, one that birthed friendship, understanding, and the profound realization that the stories we carry don't just belong to us, they are threads woven into the fabric of humanity itself, binding us in our shared experiences. And sometimes, just sometimes, they bring us the light we so desperately seek. It was a Friday night when everything spiraled out of control. My roommates had left for the weekend, and I was finally looking forward to a little alone time with a guy I had been seeing for a few weeks, Jake. We'd been texting like teenagers, and deciding to have him over felt both thrilling and slightly reckless. The rain was pouring outside, creating a cozy atmosphere, and all I could think about was how nice it would be to watch a movie and share some popcorn together. But as the night unfolded, I realized I was in for more than I bargained for. Just as we settled down on the couch, the mood lit by soft lighting and the faint sound of raindrops hitting the window, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my roommate, Melissa, who had gone home to her mom's place. At first, I shrugged it off, but when I glanced at the message, my heart sank. "Hey, can you keep it down? My mom is trying to sleep." I thought about responding to reassure her, but then Jake leaned closer, and I forgot about my phone altogether. The dialogue in front of us faded as tension filled the air, and it wasn't long before we were lost in each other. Just as the movie played on, laughter erupted from me, followed by Jake's playful remarks. That's when it happened. 3 loud, furious knocks pounded at my door, punctuated by the unmistakable voice of Melissa's mom. "Shut the fuck up." It was an implosion of shock. I froze, wild thoughts racing through my mind. Did she really just pound on my door? In my apartment? I glanced at Jake, who looked just as startled, and for a moment, we exchanged looks, an unspoken mix of embarrassment and disbelief. I didn't want to open the door, but I also felt weirdly obligated to address what had just happened. I took a deep breath, my cheeks heating up as I approached the door. I peeked through the peephole, half expecting it to be my imagination, but she was there, arms crossed and a scowl that could scare a bear. Can I help you?" I called out, keeping my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions stirring inside me. This is my apartment, and I'd appreciate a little respect. But instead of backing off, she banged harder. You shouldn't be so loud. Think of others. There was an immediate tension in the air, thick enough to cut. I was furious but also flustered and embarrassed. The last thing I wanted was to be in a standoff with my roommate's mom. I'm sorry, we'll keep it down, I replied, the words feeling like defeat. Jake shifted awkwardly behind me, and I felt myself shrinking, like a child caught misbehaving. When her footsteps faded away, I turned back to Jake, my cheeks still burning. I can't believe that just happened, I said, my voice barely a whisper, feeling both humiliated and annoyed. Yeah, that was intense, Jake replied, trying to lighten the mood with a crooked smile. But I couldn't shake off my embarrassment. Do you think I'm the asshole here? I asked, half joking but deep down, feeling the weight of her words. I mean, it's our space. But then again, I didn't think about how loud we were being. Jake shrugged, I think she overreacted. Just because she doesn't want to hear you having fun doesn't mean you should have to hide. I nodded, feeling a little comforted, but I couldn't escape the swirl of mixed emotions. As the night continued, it was hard to focus on anything else. The initial excitement had fizzled into a mix of anxiety and self-doubt. What if Melissa felt the same way? What if I really was the problem? After he left, I collapsed onto my bed, the night replaying in my head like a broken record. Should I write to Melissa and apologize, or would that just confirm I was in the wrong? Was I really the one who'd crossed a line here? In the days that followed, I spent a considerable amount of time lost in a loop of whether or not I should approach Melissa about it again. Part of me felt defensive. It was my home, after all, but then again, I didn't want to create unnecessary tension between us. Eventually, I did reach out. Hey, can we chat? I'm sorry if we were too loud the other night, I typed out. I watched the three little dots dance as she typed back, my anxiety bubbling. It's fine. Mom just gets like that sometimes. Thanks for saying something. The relief washed over me, but this lingering question hung in the air. Was I truly wrong to let loose in my own space? In the end, it didn't seem to matter as much. I learned that sometimes, even in your home, you have to navigate the constant balancing act of respect and personal freedom. And that's just life, finding that middle ground between living fiercely and being considerate. Even if it took a knock on the door from Melissa's mom to figure it out, it was a lesson learned. It was a couple of weeks later when the whole scenario faded into a distant memory, tucked neatly alongside other college mishaps. I was mostly back to my routine, classes, work, the occasional movie night with roommates. But every now and then, I'd catch myself glancing at the door, half expecting another unexpected visitor. It wasn't that my roommate's mom was a regular fixture in our lives, but that incident had a way of imprinting itself, a reminder that boundaries could be so easily crossed. One evening, I had finally decided to treat myself and unwind with a glass of cheap wine and that new show everyone was raving about. I remember feeling the warmth of the alcohol settle comfortably in my stomach as the credits rolled. The apartment was quieter than usual, the hum of the refrigerator a soft backdrop to my thoughts, and I couldn't resist the urge to kick back and binge watch. Just as I was sinking into the couch, a message pinged on my phone. It was Melissa, my roommate, asking if I could give her a ride to the grocery store. I noticed the clock. It was nearing 10 p.m. I hesitated for a moment, torn between my desire to relax undisturbed and wanting to be a good roommate. Opting for the latter, I texted back. Sure. Just let me finish this episode. Melissa's response was quick, clearly eager. Thanks. I'll be ready in 15. As I tossed my phone onto the couch, I found myself smirking at the irony of the situation. The last time I'd had a guy over, it hadn't gone great, but here I was, willingly putting on my altruistic hat and totally ignoring that nagging voice in my head. 15 minutes later, I was in the one car we had shared, parked in the grocery store lot surrounded by flickering fluorescent lights. Melissa climbed in, a flurry of movement with her purse and a list that she waved enthusiastically in front of my face. I made a plan this time. We won't end up with 8 boxes of cereal, I chuckled, appreciating her diligent efforts to keep our fridge alive. As we drove, I couldn't help but notice how her mood had shifted over the last few weeks. Melissa seemed lighter, happier, maybe it was just the thrill of independence or a deeper realization about her own boundaries. Either way, it was nice to see her so animated, and it started to tug at my heart a little, reminding me she was a good friend, despite her mom's overly assertive parenting style. The atmosphere in the car buzzed with easy conversations about mundane things, classes, parties, the ever-growing stack of laundry that awaited both us at home. But as we turned off the lively street into the quieter residential neighborhood, I felt a pang of anxiety mingle with the lightness. I didn't want to navigate any emotional heaviness tonight. Just as I was thinking about the general awfulness of adulting, Melissa's phone buzzed. I could see her mumble, "Oh, it's my mom," as she clicked on the message. "What does she want?" I asked, half joking. Melissa promptly rolled her eyes, but her expression shifted. "Oh. I think she's asking why I haven't returned home yet." I smirked, ready to tease her about being grown, but caught myself. She had been assertively carving out her own space lately, even splurging on new clothes and ditching old habits she no longer wanted. That confidence felt contagious, but instantly, I felt twinges of guilt for my own behavior. Did I have a moment to share the living fiercely lesson I'd learned? Or was I just biding my time until my own surface changed? As we entered the store, I tried to shake off the creeping sensation. Eventually, Melissa and I fell into our usual routine, scanning the aisles for snacks and sharing our dietary sins with each other. A rhythm, a comfort. Somewhere around the frozen foods, we heard a commotion. I glanced back towards the entrance, wrinkling my brow. A man standing outside the store was clearly trying to get someone's attention, waving his arms like a conductor. I didn't think much of it, but Melissa paused mid-sentence and stared, an expression of recognition washing over her face. "Oh no," she muttered. "It's my mom." I turned and sure enough, there was her mom, hands on her hips, staring at the man as if he might turn into a pumpkin at midnight. My heart sank a bit for Melissa. The last thing you want is your mother circling like a hawk on your coattails. Just as I was contemplating our escape route, her mom finally saw us. It was like those moments in bad sitcoms where the planet stops spinning, and every character locks eyes in slow motion. "Melissa, I was looking for you," she shouted, her voice ricocheting off the store walls. We exchanged glances, a silent agreement of solidarity. I could only imagine what was coming. As her mom marched toward us with purpose, I debated whether I should vanish into the cereal aisle or just face the impending storm. "Mom, it's fine. We're just shopping," Melissa chimed, but her mom wasn't having it. She wasted no time pointing an accusatory finger at the guy outside. "You can't let some stranger talk you into late-night runs, Melissa." It struck me like a bolt of lightning. Melissa shrank a little before her mom's fierce gaze. I could see the conflict dance in her eyes, loyalty to her upbringing versus the newfound freedom she was still testing out. What was I supposed to do? I stood there, feeling like a spectator to a complex play where the spoilers had all been handed out, but I was still in the audience. It felt all too familiar, this crossroad between childhood and adult independence. "I think you should apologize," her mom continued, her voice strained yet firm, but I observed a flicker of uncertainty in Melissa's eyes. The lessons learnt came rushing back to me, and I found myself taking a slow breath. I couldn't intervene directly, that would only throw fuel on the fire, but I wanted to help, to be part of her process of establishing that line she needed, just like I was doing for myself. "Or maybe we're both allowed to navigate our own choices, Mom?" I found myself saying, my heart racing. It felt awkward to speak up but somehow necessary. The tension in the air turned thick as her mom's expression shifted sharply in my direction, sudden recognition. "You too, huh? What a fun way to confuse the adults." She huffed, a mixture of frustration and disbelief intermingling in her expression. But there was something more, maybe an inkling of understanding that she wasn't the only one learning here. And just like that, I felt Melissa at my side, her posture straightening ever so slightly, emboldened to confront this moment. That nothingness between all of us had shifted, and as we stood there, I sensed the space for a dialogue, a chance to redefine it rather than simply acquiesce. All I could think was how beautifully human it was to navigate those turbulent waters together. As the conversation pivoted slowly but surely, it felt less like a scolding and more like a chance for both Melissa and her mom to meet halfway. The anxiety washed away, leaving behind a glimmer of hope for growth. Later that night, we returned home, our bags of supplies in tow. Melissa turned to me, beaming. "That was kind of you, by the way." I shrugged it off. But inside, I felt a swell of pride. I figured it had taken more than a knock at my door to find that balance, but wasn't that the real point? And as I settled on the couch again, wrapped in a familiar blanket, I recognized that sometimes life does require navigating a complex dance between assertiveness and empathy. Even if no one got the perfect score, we were all learning together, step by awkward step. As I settled into that well-worn couch, the remnants of our chaotic evening danced in my mind like strobe lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa, "THX for being cool today. Want to finish that movie? I glanced at the clock, midnight, but the couch was calling me. I tapped back, absolutely, feeling a warmth in my chest that relaxed the tension from earlier. I couldn't help but smile. The door incident had transformed from an awkward moment into something almost bonding. Melissa had a way of making even the most uncomfortable situations seem light. As she walked back into the room, tossing her hair over her shoulder and plopping down next to me, I felt grateful for her presence. We fired up the movie, but my mind kept wandering back to that knock on the door. What if I'd reacted differently? I could have stood my ground, thrown a snarky comment back at her mom. Yet, something in me knew that wouldn't have ended well. It's funny how an impulsive night can morph into a reflective conversation. Between whirs of the DVD player and the intimate glow of the TV, I pondered our little family of sorts, this quirky motley crew we had become. As the movie played, I peeked over at Melissa, who was completely absorbed in the film. I used to think of her as just a roommate, but through shared moments like these, she had become something deeper, a friend. I realized maybe we were all a bit like that, a collection of awkward encounters stitched together by our attempts to understand each other. Halfway through the film, her phone buzzed. She picked it up, her face dropping slightly. That flutter of concern pulled me out of the fictional world we'd trapped ourselves in. "It's my mom," she said, her voice tinged with apprehension. "I'd better take this." I nodded, feeling an unexpected wave of protectiveness wash over me. I didn't want any more drama tonight. I listened to her side of the conversation, the commendable sonorous tone she adopted to reassure her mom. A few minutes later, she returned, her smile forced. "Just a little concerned about me, you know how it is." "But I told her I'm fine," she added, her expression softening. We settled back into our movie, but I could tell it affected her. "Do you ever feel like you have to keep convincing people you're okay, even when you're perfectly fine?" I asked, trying to understand the weight of her burden. Melissa glanced at me, her eyes dancing with surprise. "All the time. It's exhausting, especially when you're just trying to enjoy life." We shared a silence, each lost in our thoughts, resonating in the unspoken understanding of what it meant to live under the expectations of others. After what felt like an eternity wrapped in our shared silences, she finally muttered, "Thanks for being chill today. It means a lot now." "Yeah, well, some days I stumble less than others," I replied with a hint of laughter, hoping to lighten the mood as the movie credits began to roll. The laughter felt comforting, a reminder of why I cherish these moments, even those tempered by uncomfortable knocks on the door. After the movie ended, we fell into our usual routine of chatting about the plot and debating character choices, but beneath that light-hearted conversation lingered a seriousness. I could sense the flickers of realization in the air, that we were learning how to coexist, showing consideration for each other's vulnerabilities while carving out our spaces. The night wore on, the world outside growing quiet, but inside our apartment, life pulsed with potential and vulnerability, reminding me that this space belonged to all of us. The lessons we absorbed weren't just individual, they were shared, and we were better for it. I mused on this balance we were gradually discovering, an intricate dance, and perhaps that constant, uneasy rhythm was what made life richer. As I nestled deeper into my blanket, the shadows of our earlier chaos turned to whispers of understanding. Sure, boundaries and respect were important, but what really mattered was the effort to bridge those gaps. Reflecting on our interactions, I couldn't help but feel optimistic about what tomorrow would bring, knowing that in our struggles to meet in the middle, we found something profoundly human: connection. I drifted off, the faint sounds of laughter lingering in my ears, hopeful for whatever adventures lay ahead.